All right, folks, in this video, I want to talk about some of the big lessons that I've learned from our first year living off grid, building this homestead. And so what I want to do in this is kind of go through the four main nexuses of human survival: food, water, energy, and shelter, and use that as a backdrop to kind of talk about some of the things that I've learned and some of the things that were unexpected to me. And yeah, let's go through it. I guess before I start, I just want to announce real quick too that I'm going to do a special live stream that's going to be for From the Field members only. So if you head over to fromthefield.tv, there'll be a video that's titled Special Live Stream. It's going to be December 16th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And this will be in Zoom. So we'll just use Zoom for the call, and put your questions and comments below as you normally did for these streams. And yeah, we'll answer your questions, we'll hang out, we'll chat. I've kind of missed doing the live streams a little bit, but I haven't missed having more time available. So it's been really nice to be able to just focus more on the homestead here. Even in the middle of winter, which is really settled now, the extra time has been really, really good. So I don't plan on coming back with regular live streams anytime soon. We'll do these sort of special event live streams. And yeah, that's what we're going to do for now. So let's start with it. So let's start with food. So one thing I've learned over the past year, I've been growing food for a very long time now, and anybody who watches my videos regularly knows that. That's no big surprise. And so as far as food is concerned, there wasn't any surprises as far as growing the food, because that's been my wheelhouse for 12 years now. And there were no big surprises there. Where there was a big surprise is in the preparation. And I have to say that it's probably the thing that's most overlooked when people get into homesteading. Certainly we overlooked it ourselves. And as long as I've been with my wife, which has been about 7 years now, our daughter's almost 5, we've done a lot of food prep ever since we've been together. That's been a big part of our journey together. But, since this whole, globalist takeover, the desire and need to do it more hardcore has obviously been greater. And so we've put way more effort into preserving, freezing, canning, drying everything that we grow, which really is a lot of work. I have to say, with somebody like myself, being an experienced gardener and farmer, there's way more hours spent on the prep than there is in the growing. There really is. I mean, for me to run a garden, call it a 1/4 acre garden, that would be enough to grow all the food that my family would need in a year. And I'm just talking about annual vegetables here. Perennials is a whole other thing, which isn't a lot of work, but just call it a 1/4 acre of annual vegetable production to feed my family for a year. Doesn't really take me that much time, especially once your garden is set up. Now, I'm going to be building new gardens here in the spring, so my workload is going to increase there, but just to do the work doesn't take me that much time. It might be 4 hours a week that I spend doing all the gardening. That's the planting, the harvesting, all that stuff. It doesn't take me that much work. But the prep, I'll tell you, this year my wife went hardcore. The amount of preserving and canning and all the stuff we did, it was nonstop, especially starting kind of midsummer, when really the abundance of the products come on. You've got all your really seasonal stuff, your warm weather stuff comes on. So many hours were spent on that. And that's the one thing that, we kind of didn't really anticipate with time. And all these things take time. So as far as food is concerned, that's one thing that we really learned and kind of crystallized going forward, that we need to really allocate that time, because when it catches you off guard, it kind of sucks because it takes so much time from you that it's overwhelming. And so even having some people help might be something we're going to do next year. Having like somebody come up and help us do some of the prep, because it's a significant amount of work. So that's the food. Energy. Let's talk about energy. Now, living off grid is, of course, more involved than being on the grid. Now, I've done my best to set up this system to be as autonomous as it can be. Having said that, the system there's still little tweaks. Like right now I'm having an issue with my generator, which I've actually had to run. This is the first time that I've had to run the generator. We've been really socked in for a while now, and the batteries are getting low, so I'm running the diesel generator and topping the batteries back up. But I've been having some issues with the way the generator communicates to the system, some little tweaks, all these things when you set up. But the thing when you're off grid for your energy is you have to really monitor your usage and your consumption, because if you don't, you can kind of get sidelined a little bit, where you didn't see something coming. And that fortunately, that actually did happen once. And the challenge is just keeping the garage where all the power stuff is stored warm. And that's about to stop, because right now we're actually putting the windows in and the doors, and so that building is going to be a lot more buttoned up. But yeah, just watching that energy consumption, because when you have weather like this, which is absolutely the vast majority of days when we're on the sort of front end of the winter, once we pass December and get into January, we start to get a lot more clear days. But certainly, late October into Christmas is like this for the most part. We might only get a handful of sunny days. And so you really have to watch how much you're consuming and make sure that that's balanced out. And, I'm a bit tedious with things like this too. I like to watch the system. There's a great software application we use. Our system is it's all Schneider Electric, and I like to monitor it too, but it takes time. And so it's like anything, with freedom comes responsibility. And that's the overall thrust of this entire conversation, is that all these things really boil down to, if you want to be free and you want to have your own food system, energy, shelter, and water, all these things require a little bit of extra effort. So yeah, the energy, definitely takes more time just to manage it. And certainly going in and setting it up has been quite the undertaking. There's no question about it. So that's the energy. I would probably say I spend, at least at the moment, half an hour kind of just managing a day, managing things and making sure things are working okay. And hopefully once I've gone through a bit more time with the system, that isn't a continuous thing, that eventually we hit some kind of equilibrium, and I don't have to think about it at all. And the diesel generator we're running, the Yanmar 13 kilowatt generator, is very efficient. I haven't even noticed how much diesel it's burned. It's quite amazing. So, but yeah, little tweaks. And so going forward, a lot of these things, as you become more efficient on a homestead, you kind of work these things out, just like I've shown on my farm for years. It's all about developing systems to make things less work, So that's energy. So food, where do we start? We went food, energy. Let's talk about shelter. Now in shelter, I'm going to include keeping the house warm. Maybe you could put that in energy too, but I'll put it in shelter. We live in a small cabin. It's about 800 square feet. It came with the property, and we're in the process of building quite a bit larger of a home, which we haven't broken ground on yet. Well, we've broken ground, but we haven't poured any concrete or anything yet. But I spend probably around 3 to 4 hours a week just keeping the place warm. So chopping firewood, cutting up kindling, and just making sure that our home is warm, as well as the garage, because the garage is where I keep my power system, and I just need to keep that above freezing. But we just put the garage door on that. Now I've got my Tesla back. I'm actually pretty excited about that, because I do love that car, and it's very nice to drive, and I've been charging it with the system. It's probably why I'm burning a bit more diesel. People will probably get triggered by that. Oh, you're a hypocrite, you're driving an electric car and you're burning diesel. It's like, I don't care. I'm not one of these hardcore environmentalists anymore. And so for me, it is what it is. The electric car has a lot of benefit for 8 months of the year, maybe 10 months of the year, when we're overproducing solar. I now have a place to put that. My car was in repair for 2 months, which is a total pain in the ass, but it was. I got it back now, so I can keep my car warm. And so electric cars, I'm kind of taking a bit of a sideline on this, but electric cars have to stay warm. They do not do well in cold weather. They actually perform fine, but if you have an electric car and you got a Canadian winter and that car's sitting outside, if it's not plugged in and trickle charging, your battery is going to go down every night. Like, we lose it's been about minus 10 Celsius at night recently. And if that car just sits outside, not plugged in, and it can't be plugged, I can't just trickle charge it because we're off grid. That would be a pretty inefficient use of power when it's not coming in. It's best to charge that car on a sunny day. And so now I've got it put in the garage, keeping it warm. Then the battery doesn't phantom drain, which is great. And then that also means when I get that car out running, electric cars, I haven't really driven a lot of other electric cars except Teslas. I've driven all the different Tesla models. We have a Model X, and if it starts cold, your battery won't regenerate. The battery needs to be at a certain temperature to go into regen mode. And so the advantage of having that car kept warm is that if I go and drive right now, it's about minus 10 outside, the car's warmed up, and so it'll regenerate. Thus, it uses way less energy. And so it's important to keep the car warm. But I probably overestimated or underestimated how much time I would have to spend on keeping the buildings warm. And the garage, I don't need to keep it to the same standard as the house. So the house, I like to keep it warm. I probably want it to be 25 degrees Celsius, nice and toasty. And I've got a system I showed in one of my last videos from the field where I've got this little wood shack on a skid, and I load it up with firewood. It's probably about a quarter of a cord, maybe about, it's probably less than that. It's probably a fifth of a cord or a sixth of a cord. And then I just take that down to my wood shop or my wood cutting area. I chop up firewood, load it on there, lift it up with the skid steer, put it right next to the cabin. So it's one less handling of that wood I have to do. That's made things a little bit more efficient, and I started doing that about mid-November, and it's worked out really well. It's saved me a lot of steps, because I always have a pile of wood inside the cabin, and that lasts about 2 days. And then I got to go outside and bring more wood in. So now that wood is right next to the cabin is nice. It's a lot less steps. It means I'm having to go outside a lot more. But I'm spending about 4 hours a week on firewood. And that's kind of just, if you total up, starting new fires, bringing new wood inside the cabin or the garage, and also cutting up kindling. I'll try to cut I cut my kindling into little totes, and I just use a hatchet, and it works quite well. I like to cut really thin stuff. I found that I like to have about 4 or 5 different sizes of firewood. I like to have a really thin, super thin, only as thick as a pencil for kindling to start my fire, and I break that up and make a little pile to get that going, and then I put some larger kindling, call it a number 2 kindling on there to get it really roaring. Then I put on wood about 2 inches thick on that to get my temperature of my stove really roaring. You know, the more surface area you have on wood, the faster it burns. Then I go into a larger type wood, which is probably a common size piece of firewood, and I'll burn that stuff for half a day. And then once I have a really good amount of coals established, then I put on the big pieces that might be a quarter or a fifth size of a round. And then those take off well, and then that's how I can burn a fire overnight. And that works quite well. But yeah, I mean, quite a bit of time going into the firewood. Another thing that I spend probably maybe just a couple hours a week, I spend on managing our composting toilet. And when I say a couple hours a week, that's just looking at an average, because about once a month I have to clean the whole system. So we shit in buckets, folks. Our new system, when with the house, we're planning to install a composting toilet called a Phoenix, which is way more hands off. You really only have to manage it once a year, and it has you know, basically poop and pee down into this big barrel, essentially, that's a floor underneath. We have a utility room in the new house where that'll be, and I won't have to manage it regularly. But with our compost 5-gallon bucket system with sawdust, I have to manage it fairly regularly. I have to change the bucket out almost every day, and all that entails is, you know, basically how the system works in a nutshell is we poop and pee in a bucket, and we cover it with sawdust. We have an ample supply of sawdust because of all the mills around here, and so that's abundant and free and widely available. And so that's our carbon. And so every time you poop or pee, you cover it up, and it doesn't smell. It's quite a nice system, actually. I don't mind it. And even when I have to deal with the buckets once a month and dump them all out, it's not really that gross, to be honest. It doesn't bother me. I kind of like the idea of being connected to all the things that I do in my day-to-day life. It's kind of how I romanticized homesteading for many years, and now experiencing it. But so that's what I have to do, and I spend a couple hours a week doing that. And I think besides that, that's really mostly the time that I'm spending on our home, our shelter. And lastly, water. So I don't have to spend a lot of regular time on water, but we do have to spend time on the shoulder season, and really this is something that will change once our home is built. So in our current scenario with how we're living, we have this cabin that came with the property, and there's a little woodshed that is it's a watershed / woodshed that's about 200 feet off the cabin by this pond. If you've seen my vlogs from the beginning, you've seen this. I've showed it many times. And there's a 40,000 liter cistern in there, basically as a foundation, a concrete foundation. And there's this little building that's like a storage shed with a little 2 sides for storing wood on it. It's a neat little building. And we drilled a new well this year, and that well we can pump from, but because the way the place that the well is set up, once our house is built, that well will go directly underground to the back of the utility room of the house. And at that point, when that happens, I won't have to spend any more time worrying about how I manage my water. But right now, because we're still using the cistern system, the way the previous owners used that system is there was a pit well, and they would pump seasonal snowmelt and water, that, you know, precipitation. So basically they would pump from this pit well in the spring and the fall to fill up that cistern, and then that cistern could essentially be filled about twice a year, and then that would be enough water for them to live off for the year. But it's not for us. We have a family of 4, and we're here full time. The previous owner wasn't here full time, And so the way I'm doing it right now is I've got this series of prime 100 inch and a quarter line that comes from our drilled well. And in the summer, I've shown you this in videos. We've got a cistern system up the hill here with 18,000 liters, and that system is for my my irrigation on the property, so for all the perennials and annuals and stuff that we're going to plant, and fire suppression as well. And I also have that system connected up to the cistern of the old system here. And so I've been able to, on a couple occasions, basically pump from the well and just fill up the cistern. And so before we got really cold temperatures, I topped up our cistern. And we're basically using that water right now. But one thing I didn't anticipate this year is just the amount of extra time it would be to do that. And so I'm actually waiting for, we're down to we're sitting at about 75% in there. So we still got about 30,000 liters of water, which is quite a bit. And we're not that water conservative here. My kids take baths every couple days. I certainly don't shower every day. I don't really like to anyways, but we're using the amount of water that a normal family would probably use. And, we're going through it. So I'm kind of waiting for a day where it's at least not too much further below freezing, so that I can run the system, which means I have to run water through these lines that are above ground and fill that cistern up again, and then decommission it, drain everything out before it gets really cold again, and then have that water for the next number of months. But it looks like I'll be able to do that. So far, I think the last time we filled that cistern up was end of October. So let's call it November 1st. And right now, as I record this, we are December 11th. And so I've used 25% in that time. So I've got, at least another couple months in there before I have to do it again. But I kind of just, whenever I see an opportunity, if it warms up periodically in a day, I go, hey, I might as well do this. And so that's something that I didn't really anticipate having to put time into. But it's something that takes time. And I got to tell you guys, I feel very fortunate to be in a position where I've had quite a bit of success in my career. And a lot of people always ask me, oh, did farming pay for all this? No, absolutely not. I've made a really good living as a content creator for a number of years now. Ever since I wrote my book 6 years ago, I essentially removed myself from the farm. All the numbers I talk about in my farming are all accurate and honest, and my farms are profitable. But to do this project took a lot more than farming. And right now I'm in a position where I don't need to work 40 hours a week to make money, which is, I'm blessed. But I worked hard to do this. So I know I can thank myself for the most part for this. But I spend, keeping up with construction, homestead chores, and all those things. This is full time for me. This is all I'm doing. And really it's probably 60 hours a week. I haven't worked hours like this in quite a long time. Taking on a homestead project like this is a massive endeavor. So that's kind of where it's at, but there's some times where, my wife is yelling at me in the morning to go and empty the toilet. I just want to sleep another 10 minutes. But at the same time, when I look back at it all and put it into perspective, it's like I said earlier, with freedom comes great responsibility. And that's what we signed up for. And it's great, because the amazing thing about doing work on a homestead is that work is yours and yours alone. So when I'm chopping firewood or changing up my composting toilets or checking my power system or, doing gardening work or whatever it is, I own that labor. That's mine. That labor's not taxed. It's not subject to inflation. It's not subject to bank fees and surcharges. That's my labor. I think this is a thing that anybody who is awake right now with all this madness, this total globalist technocratic takeover that's going on right now, anybody who is awake to what's going on is having to face the reality that if you're going to want to live free in this world and not go into the sort of globalist new world order urban prison, or plug your head into the metaverse or whatever the next stage of removing you from your true self is, you're confronting and being confronted with the fact that you're going to have to take on some serious responsibility. And you know what? I don't think that's a bad thing. I actually am very grateful for everything that's happened right now, because it's making a lot of people wake up. And I can tell you, I won't tell you where we live, but we live in a very small rural area with a very low population. I know more awake people here than I ever did when I lived in Kelowna. And Kelowna's a fairly big city. Not a big city, but it's a big town. You know, it's a, 180,000 people that live there. And I'm a social guy. I know a lot of people. But I'm in an area now with like not even 1% of that population. And I know more awake people here that are doing things that are proactive, that are producers versus consumers. They're just going for it, and they're aware of what's going on. I know more people here in this community than I did in Kelowna, and it's an interesting thing, because it seems to me that that's where we're going to end up, is in these rural areas. Because if you're going to want to live in the city, you're going to be faced with, do you want life as you've known it in the city, or do you want to live a life of restrictions? And I can't tell you how many people I know that I thought would never take the injection that did, because they just wanted to go back to normal. But they made kind of a stupid decision, because it's not going back to normal. You can get, how many boosters is it going to take until you wake up? And I think there's a lot of people realizing that now, that this whole promise of life will go back to normal once there's I don't even want to say the word so that the video doesn't get censored, but you know what I'm talking about. Once that became available, that things would go back to normal, but they haven't, and they won't, because the more we comply, well, I'm not complying with this, but the more you comply or other people comply, the longer this and the worse this is going to get. So it's interesting, but anybody who's in a situation like that is going to be faced with, are you going to live a life of responsibility? Because it's the only way out of this, in my opinion. I don't really think protesting is all that effective, because people that run the show are going to execute this because this is their last move. This is their Hail Mary, I believe. I believe this is all connected to Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. It's about creating a police surveillance state, technocratic surveillance state, where you basically have no autonomy over your own body. It's just a big CAFO. It's a big animal farm. And that's what they want. When you are amongst the people who have it all, and you can just print the money, more money isn't really much of a motivation. But control is, because that's the one thing that they just can't print. And so they want more control. And that's what this is all about, is just more control. And people are going along with it. You got shills like Jimmy Fallon singing songs about boosters over Christmas. Like it's absolutely insane to me, the level of propaganda and just blatant shilling that is happening right now, and people just kind of go along with it. And that's their choice. And I'm all for it. I think if you want the injection, you should take it. And but I just want to do my own thing, and that's what we're doing. But again, it all comes with great responsibility. It means committing more time, and we're gonna have to get used to that, because it might get to a point soon where we don't even have access to banking. And I hope that doesn't happen, but it seems like that's in the cards. So I didn't mean to make this video about a rant like that. I wanted to talk about the homesteading stuff, but I hope you guys got some value out of it. And just a reminder that if you want to join me for that live stream on December 16th, Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, you can do that. If you're a member, it's for members only. However, I will say, if you are curious about signing up for FromTheField.tv, we do now have a 7-day free trial, so you can sign up and check it out. There's so much content in there, and if you look at over the years the number of comments that I get in my live streams from our members who are just so grateful for the content, I think it speaks for itself. I'm not a big seller, but our platform is amazing, and it's all about creating value for people who want to be on the land in some way or another, and we've got a great panel of experts. And one thing we're doing right now, just one last plug for it, is we're doing a series called Community Questions. So myself and all of the other content creators, we have it from the field, and so this is kind of what we've done instead of live streams, is you can ask us questions. We use a platform called Video Ask, and you can ask us questions in video format, and then we'll make a video response for you. And so those are stacking up. You can see if you go into fromthefield.tv, you'll see them as its own section, Community Questions. So if you want to engage me, you can do that. And I have to say, I've been surprised how few of our members are actually asking me questions. Not that I want to throw a bunch of work on my plate, but I do enjoy doing them, I have to say. And it doesn't take long to hammer out a few minute response for a question that you might have. So I would encourage any of the members to go in and check that out. I think it might just be not everybody's aware of it, but I see guys like Dakota Cohen and David Bouchard and Stephen Cornett in there answering questions in video form, and it's sweet. The value that you're getting from this, it's kind of like personal consulting. So go and check that out. Anyways, folks, I've got to get back to some homestead work here, but I hope you found that video helpful. If I don't see you in the live stream on December 16th, I'll see you in the new year. So have yourself a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I'll talk to you guys soon.